Well, that leads me on to the next set of slides, because Jason's talked about the high-level principles and things you can do, and I'm actually now going to introduce some specific actions that you can actually take to address some of the issues that we have actually raised this morning. The first thing, we need to look after what we've already got, and we need to deliver what we say we're going to deliver. That's what the community expects from you as a council. So we need to scale the size of our capital program. We're talking about the prioritization of funding, and we may need to look at some process changes. We may need to do some Section 17As to actually look at how we can best deliver some of these services in the most cost-efficient manner. I know it's been a tension point with when we contract out so much. Is there some viability of setting up with other councils to establish some CCOs that actually will do the works on behalf of all of the councils, like a roading team that goes around fixing the potholes instead of contracting out to external? There's a whole range of options you can look at for there. And we need to make sure we're budgeting for the whole of life OPEX for the assets in all our projects. Jason's talked about divestment of surplus and underutilized land and facilities, and ensuring that we are charging reasonable lease fees for land that we are leasing to some groups. But we do have quite a bit of council surplus land that we could be looking at how best can we use that and make it work in our favor, even if it means putting some of facilities that we know that we need in the future. Can we use our own council land to put those facilities on as opposed to buying more? You know, just thinking about things a little bit differently. Okay. Talking about our infrastructure, that's where your resilient line comes in. Very seriously, we have to take a serious look at climate change. You have had the climate change strategy for the whole of the district. We need to look at what we can take out of it and make useful for our council. And this is the LTP to help do that with some tangible actions that we can do. So we want to look at the impacts of climate change, which all of the activities that are doing an activity management plan are addressing that in their activity management plan, and also with the natural hazards. But we want to look at what we could do as an organization as well. Like, should we be looking at our procurement? Should we be looking at our fleet? Should we be looking at a range of options about reducing emissions? And it's about getting some baseline data first. So we need to look at, if we're serious about wanting to address emissions, when we're looking at investments, do we have a green lens on that? We need to be working more with the climate impacted communities. Being a braided rivers communities, you do have some very vulnerable areas, and do that engagement across the district. Increase our knowledge, data, and understanding of the climate risk, and look at some targeted emission reduction projects that we can initiate in-house for our own activities. We have a role to be a leader and an advocate on how to reduce emissions in the Timaru business community. I don't think it's not something that the community wants for council just to tell everybody else what to do. I think they want to see the council walking the talk as well and leading the way. And I think some of those things in the climate change strategy can be taken and made into something meaningful that you can put into action to meet that purpose. And that means actually probably doing a few pilot projects. So remember at the start when I'm talking about your priorities are not determined by your vision, they're determined by your budget. So it will be what you put the funding towards. Okay, now, planning and investing for a growing and changing demand. As stated before, the growth may not be at this current point in time, driven by population, but we're investing for a time when it will be, because we do have economic growth and we have changing demands because of that economic growth. Our roads are taking a real hammering because of the extra transport and the trucks and the industrial growth in this area. So that creates some service level challenges for you. One of the things that you have mentioned, particularly in our last workshop when we went over some of the assumptions, when we were talking about planning and growth, and what I heard was, I think the council is talking about an integrated planning model where we have infrastructure, district planning, and some of the services looking at the data of where the growth projections are going to be throughout the district and which communities, and do the integrated planning between all of the different facilities here and services to do a growth strategy and take into account all the work that has been done in the district planning space. They have commissioned a lot of really good reports. How do we actually bring those together into a plan for you guys to be able to plan for the future that you were talking about in the last workshop? We can't do all of this on our own. So collaborating with central government, developers, Monofinoa, and the communities to identify those opportunities and make the most of it is really critical. Partnership is one of the key words we really need to make this LTP about. We don't have a lot of spare change to do a lot of shiny new with our commitments of what we have to do. So we need to really leverage partnerships and relationships. We need to look at how we promote more active travel, public transport usage, road safety, all of those things that can make a real difference in a livable city that's not always so car-centric, to help reduce your emissions and also increase the livability. Foot traffic generates more profit for your shops, front and center, okay? And let's look at some alternative funding options and models. Thinking outside the square. Making sure we have really good, robust data. Now, having worked so closely with Susie and Roding, I know the improvements that have been made for the data collation are really impressive. You have got a very good sense of the evidence needed to support every business case that they send to Waka Kotahi. Waka Kotahi, of course, are measuring that up against, 68 other territorial authorities plus the regional ones. But the data that will be presented to you for anything going forward is robust and sound. So that is an example of using it to inform your projects. Trying to identify and maximize some external funding opportunities, especially for the new technologies. Let's be honest, the public sector will never be on the cutting edge of technology. You just don't have the funding for it, but capitalize in partnership with things like Callahan Innovation. Look at how you can actually capitalize on the work that they're doing. Lincoln University with their food tech and things like that. How can we partner with those kind of progressive institutions on the cutting edge to bring the benefit back into some of your council projects? And looking at the social and cultural data, like what is important to Monofinoa? How do we know that any urban planning that we do, what the impact will be on any sites of historical significance. Does it encompass all of the cultures? We have an increasing diversity in this community. How will that be reflected in our future planning? Okay? And now, there you go. This is the framework, and here are the key questions you have to ask yourself. That will be Boothie. Well, I didn't put stop the madness, but I did put. And what is affordable? Because that is a key question. And what is deliverable?
Looks like you
Readjusting your halo, sir. So, yeah. But those are the really key questions that will come up time and again. And what we're asking you is we want you to have the robust discussion amongst yourselves. And right now at the timing, it's a good time to stop here and have a cup of tea. And then come back and start having those discussions with some of those questions so that we can help prepare for the next workshop. Okay. Thank you. So we're going to break for a cup of tea, and I'd say 15, 20 minutes maybe? Yep, 20 past. We can come back in here. Thank you, counselors, for your time this morning. Thank you to the SLT, especially Andrew, for coming up and supporting. Thank you. And thank you, Jason.